subscribe. But if you haven't, please like the video, subscribe. I really appreciate it. Again, my name's Joe Payne. This is Political Payne. I'm an independent journalist out of Santa Maria. And I have a story for you guys, an update, a follow-up about a story that I did a bunch of reporting on in last year. Okay, so I started my channel around the lockdowns, and then one of the early opportunities for live reporting was the resurgence of Black Lives Matter after the murder of George Floyd, correct? So one story, I didn't get to go out and do any live coverage of the protests in San Luis Obispo. I did mostly in my hometown, Santa Maria. But in San Luis Obispo to the north, there were several Black Lives Matter rallies. And well, one thing that kind of made them stand out, the ones in SLO, is the demonstrations a couple times blocked Highway 101. Protesters marched out into the 101 and blocked traffic. So that was, just obviously civil disobedience, but you didn't see that in Santa Maria. The other areas, you didn't see too much of that. So it was a very bold thing. A lot of college students and just young people got involved with that. They were tear gassed. One of the first protests that they had. The SLO City Council is currently doing a review of that situation, whether the SLO PD should have done that. The police chief at that time has kind of skipped town. She had a couple other scandals, leaving her gun in a bathroom, trying to charge the guy who picked it up, all kinds of wacky stuff. But on July 21st, 2020, there was a Black Lives Matter rally, and it, again, like a one before, it went into Highway 101 and they blocked traffic. Now, there was an altercation between a car, a BMW, a motorist. The car didn't act of its own accord. It was driven by a motorist. The car was a BMW. The motorist is still unidentified. And I remember seeing there were live streams that activists did and quickly took down after the incident, because quite often these videos are used by law enforcement to identify activists, and the activists are trying to protect themselves, right? It made me wonder, because I remember seeing the footage and seeing clearly that the car accelerated into protesters. The car tried to go around the protesters. They kind of crowded around to block the car, and there seemed to be some yelling, and then the car accelerated into people. That's what I saw from the day of, brief live stream, and then that live stream disappeared. And later that day, the San Luis Obispo chapter of the California Highway Patrol, the CHP, and SLO PD began characterizing the actions of these protesters. They said that the protesters attacked the motorist unprovoked, and that somebody jumped on the hood of the car. And what also did happen was one of the activists threw their skateboard at the back windshield of the car. And it was later claimed that there was a child in the back of the car who had glass rain down on them by this. That has the only source for that was the SLO chapter of the CHP. Now, I interviewed a couple activists who were there, including one who was literally standing right there when the whole incident happened. And they were clear that the SLO CHP was being dishonest, and that, in fact, the car accelerated into people. They weren't just attacking the car willy-nilly or out of nowhere. The skateboard didn't smash the back windshield for no reason. In fact, you can look back in my videos. I have an interview with these activists, and this activist Leah said that the smashing of the windshield only happened after one of these protesters was, thrown onto the hood of the car after the motorist accelerated into them, and that he smashed the back windshield, and that the car slowed down for a moment, and that allowed the person to get off the car. So guess what just happened? Oh, I should also say, the SLO PD arrested kind of the lead organizer, or at least one of the most prominent organizers. Her name was Tianna Arata, and they arrested her that night and kind of tried to throw the book at her. The SLO PD recommended 5 felonies, and then the DA, the San Luis Obispo district attorney, his name is Dan Dow, he tried to go forward with 5 misdemeanors. Now, I'm going to get to Dan Dow in a minute. Dan Dow is very right-wing district attorney, and I mean extremely right-wing, and he's already been kicked off of Tianna Arata's case. But so what we have here is a clear example that and this is what activists were saying throughout this whole thing, that the local police were being dishonest. They disseminated that these protesters jumped on the hood of this car to local media. And if you want to know something, I mean, this is, as a print journalist, I can tell you, as an independent, I came up at an independent newspaper, but I also hold this as an independent journalist, not to be this way. But most legacy media takes what law enforcement says as gospel, and they just run it uncritically. Okay? Now they're hedging their bets, because here's the story. Newly released drone footage shows collision between BMW driver and protesters in Slow. So basically, the protesters have been vindicated. Okay? The lawyer for one of the protesters, I believe the young man who was hit by the car, has come out and said that, or has shared the drone footage from the Slow PD that they had access to. Here it is. Attorneys for 2 Black Lives Matter demonstrators are calling for charges to be filed against the driver of a silver BMW who was involved in an altercation with those protesters. Sam Grocott and Robert Lastra are 2 of the 6 people charged in connection with the Black Lives Matter protest that took place in San Luis Obispo on July 21st. So, and this shows you a little bit. This is like our local TV media, and I always say news should be read and not watched. What I'm doing here is not like typical news, guys. This is infotainment. I'm here to inform you, but also entertain you. If you want the straight dope, you gotta go to print journalism. That's where we do the hardest work. I do some of that on my website, politicalpayne.com. Anywho, during the protest, demonstrators blocked Highway 101, and police claimed some protesters committed acts of vandalism. So the KSBY here is hedging their bets after taking this stuff uncritically. Because check it out. Here's the drone footage that we now have a hold of. And this is really fascinating. Let's see if I can make it larger. Here we go. So check this out. Again, Slow PD did not make this available. So this attorney for one of these protesters has basically kind of superseded and acted a little out of bounds to do this. But check out what we see here. So you're gonna see that's the BMW, and he's moving forward. And this is a guy on a bike. Now the guy starts yelling at see, look, he's opening his door. He's kind of, and according to people there, he was yelling at them, obscenities. Looks like somebody's peeking through the moonroof. They push the bike. So now the guy on the bike dismounts because they just nudged him. And the biker is going to get out of the way. But watch what happens here. Watch the yellow shirt, the guy in the yellow shirt. Okay. So here again, this is a Slow PD drone. The San Luis Obispo Police Department just has money for drones to, to watch this whole thing go down. So look, dang. Okay, got to back that up again. So look, he is finding he can't get around the biker, so he goes around even more. They try to block him, and now there's the guy in yellow being pushed, and so now he's pushed onto the hood. They're trying to stop him. And that's, I don't know if you guys saw the skateboarder. So look, see, this is the skateboarder. He's going to throw his skateboard. This is the guy on the hood, and smash. The car slows down and then accelerates, and the guy gets off just in time. So that right there is the incident. The car clearly accelerated into these protesters. Boom. Hits the guy. And then, there's the skateboard only after this guy accelerated into pedestrians, into the protesters. Now, you could argue, well, they shouldn't have been in the street. They shouldn't have done this. They shouldn't have done that. Blocking traffic is a clear, long-held act of civil disobedience. It always has been used by protesters in a lot of areas. But so this is another story. So the Slow Tribune, it does a really great job. They have a paywall that's hard to get around. So I read this on my phone, and so I just got some pictures from my phone. I know it's a little ghetto fab, but check it out. So just to illustrate this further, okay? So the San Luis Obispo County District Attorney Dan Dow, who I said before is very right wing, and I'm going to get to more of that and some of the proof of that. He was trying these two men, the one who was thrown on the hood of the car, and then the one who smashed the back windshield, as vandals who were attacking a victimized person, who the DA has yet to identify. They are the DA and the CHP are protecting the identity of the motorist. And we're going to hear more about that in a second, but they are painting this guy as a victim, but they also did that with another motorist, that they were a victim of vandalism, or that they were a victim of having their. They also tried to charge activist Dan Dow did with what's the word I'm looking for, with like holding people hostage, denying their Fifth Amendment rights of free movement for blocking traffic. Okay, that's quite a stretch. So check this out. He actually, DA Dan Dow tried to pressure one of these motorists who just got, had to wait in traffic for a bit, into claiming that he was victimized by the whole thing. Quote, "I am, quote, not a victim," driver says of Highway 101 protest, despite goading by DA's office. Okay, so like you can see the kids here sitting on Highway 101. Now let's see here. So one of the drivers listed in the district attorney office's complaint against protest leader Tianna Arata says he's, quote, not a victim. And he called out a DA's investigator for trying to cajole him into indicating he felt threatened by marchers who blocked Highway 101. The latest twist in the case came in a letter from the driver's attorney to the DA's office on the eve of a court hearing for 4 San Luis Obispo protesters accused of holding motorists hostage during a July 21st march on the highway. A motorist, who's referred to as John Doe in at least one of the 16 counts in the DA's complaint, says a DA's office investigator ignored his statements to the agency and tried to goad him into saying he feared for his safety during the march. Quote, "It would really help us if you were scared," the alleged victim says the investigator told him during their interview, according to a letter from the man's attorney sent to the DA's office. So crazy, right? So this basically the DA was trying to coax this person into saying they were a victim and that they were scared, when in fact they were not. They said, what's there to be scared about? It's some kids blocking traffic. Don't really care. So this is concerning, right? Based on what we were just seeing when this car accelerated into people, and the CHP chapter and DA Dan Dow backing them up is saying that the guy who accelerated into people is a victim. So the lawyer who released this footage put out a strongly worded letter, and I want to read from it, guys, because this is really interesting. Look at this. Slow PD drone footage showed CHP Captain Klinberg lied to press and public. This is from this attorney. San Luis Obispo law enforcement and Slow District Attorney Dan Dow are lying to the public through the press. They are misrepresenting the facts of the case to the public. By intentionally choosing not to release the video footage, they were able to provide false statements to the press and control and shape the narrative to fit their personal agenda. This is a recurring problem throughout the United States, as law enforcement withholds evidence from the public while still making public statements contradicted by the evidence they refuse to release. So he says, "I'm still completing my investigation, but given Dan Dow's documented ties to conservative right-wing extremists, the evidence is piling up, showing that Dan Dow, an elected official, is abusing his prosecutorial discretion to serve himself and his right-wing extremist clan." Wow. So this guy is not pulling any punches. He goes into like the fact that the guy accelerated it into the motorist into his client. Yet instead of arresting this violent racist that ran his car into my client, DA Dow is arresting young adults for petty charges like false imprisonment, charges usually reserved for serious crimes such as kidnappings, not standing in front of someone's car. Since local law enforcement and DA Dan Dow have been misrepresenting the facts to the public, it has prejudiced my client's right to receive a fair trial. Let's see. And then he says, finally, I'm demanding that the racist driver that ran his car into my clients be arrested and brought to face charges. The evidence is in the video. There is sufficient probable cause to arrest the driver. It is a miscarriage of justice that he is not a defendant in the case. Law enforcement and DA Dandow owe the public a legitimate explanation as to why they are permitting a racist, violent criminal to remain free when there is video evidence showing he committed a crime. Should Captain Klinberg continue to support the personal interests of Dandow to the detriment of his duties, I intend to bring a motion to compel the arrest of the driver. So this is Vincent Barrios. He's from San Francisco, one of these San Francisco hotshot lawyers, right? But this guy isn't making stuff up by saying that Dan Dow is extremely conservative or is quite far right, because there's actually quite a bit of evidence for that. I've covered some of it. He was at a 4th of July event not long before this incident, where he was talking about not enforcing state COVID restrictions on churches, saying that this was going to be a sanctuary county for churches. So he's okay with flaunting certain laws, right? If they don't, meet up with his politics. He's quite conservative, right-wing Christian. And one of these CHP guys was with him at that show, and they were talking together about being warriors for Christ. Not long after all of this, after the incident, Dan Dow was at an event, literally a secessionists event. There's a group called New California that wants to secede part of California or the whole state as a new state because they claim the Democrats are unconstitutional and all this stuff. Guess who he was palling around with? Right-wing darling Candace Owens. There he is. That's Dan Dow next to Candace Owens. This is on my Instagram. You can follow me at Political Payne, Payne. And, I mean, he's palling around with Candace Owens. But, this isn't even what did in Dan Dow's credibility. Dan Dow, his wife sent out an email campaigning, trying to raise money, and specifically mentioning that he was fighting against these defund, abolish the police movement, this crazy movement. Literally talking about the case that he's trying, plugging that, and trying to raise money off of it. And you know what that ended up doing to the case against Tianna Arata? Boom. Judge disqualifies SLO County District Attorney from prosecuting Tianna Arata. So really, really just, he's challenging this, of course. He was always going to. But really impressive that, let's see here. I want to find, in his ruling, Judge Matthew Guerrero said, quote, the men and women charged here are entitled to a prosecution not clouded by political or personal advantage to the prosecutor. This is especially pointed in a case where the defendants are protesting injustice and systemic bias. The court's finding of an apparent and actual conflict of interest make it unlikely that the defendants would receive fair treatment during all portions of the criminal proceedings. So we see here clearly law enforcement, the way that they have approached Black Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter activists is biased. It's clearly biased, because what are these protests about? Police and police bias and misuse of force. And here we see them clearly misrepresenting information, saying that these activists attacked the car, jumped on the hood, when the guy was accelerating into them, right? There were multiple cases across the summer where people violently drove into crowds of Black Lives Matter protesters. Some claimed that they feared for their safety, but in Virginia, one was a grand wizard of the KKK who drove into people. In Bakersfield, a black man was struck and killed while marching in a Black Lives Matter rally by a white motorist, okay? So this became a meme for the right, drive into them. If they come around me, I'm just going to, if they want to block traffic, I'm going to drive into them. And so that's what this guy did. And here we see law enforcement all the way up to a district attorney protecting them. This district attorney is clearly compromised and biased. But it's not just limited to it's not just limited to Dan Dow as an individual, or just this agency and these police. It's obviously it's a systemic thing. It's across all of that. But I want to find, there was a let's see, there was an email that was released. Let's see, like an interdepartmental email. Here it is. I just found it. Sorry guys, should have been prepared. So the Slow Tribune, which I showed the screenshot from them earlier. Guys, Matt Fountain at the Slow Tribune is an incredible reporter. He's been doing great work on all of this. This is why, if you can, support local media that does good. If you see your local media doing good, all these papers are dying. They're dying out. Support them. Subscribe. Do whatever you can to support them, because guess what? Some of them do good work, like holding law enforcement, holding government agencies and representatives close to you accountable. This is the level of government that has the most impact on your life, is local government agencies like law enforcement, county, city governments. But so the Slow Tribune, Matt Fountain got a hold of this interdepartment email, and Dan Dow did not want to release this, but he did. Because he has to. It's the Freedom of Information Act. And this was an email from Delaney Henready, and she's the deputy district attorney. So this judge, when he kicked Dan Dow off the case, he kicked his whole damn office off the case, because they're all compromised. But even within this DA's office, there's division. And so I just want to highlight this because it's very interesting to me. The email to my friends. So this is in August. So this is, like a few weeks after the incident, that we've been talking about this whole time, July 21st. But they're obviously arguing about it inside the DA's office, deputy district attorneys and all of this. I lay awake last night thinking about our meeting yesterday and the comments that were made, and I was saddened by the division that has come to the office and amongst my colleagues. So there's division. Who's creating the division? I firmly believe we all came to this profession to do what was right, to seek the truth, to do justice for the victims of crime, to protect our community, to make it safe to raise a family, and enjoy the liberties guaranteed by our state and federal constitutions. I care for you, and I support each and every one of you. She goes on, let me explain my personal background, and lots of, my parents were big supporters of the civil rights movement, Reverend Dr. Luther King, all this stuff. Let's see. She just goes on and on about that. Yes. Now, here's where it gets interesting. However, so all of that stuff to talk about Martin Luther King and her parents and supporting civil rights and all that. Now, however, I have to express my disagreement with some of the sentiments that were expressed. I do not believe there is anything brave or courageous in leading a large group of people with the protection of law enforcement officers onto the highway to hold hostage men and women and their children on the highway. I do not think there is anything praiseworthy in jumping on the hood of a car of a man trying to drive around the blockade and smashing the rear view window of his car with a skateboard, shattering glass into the rear seat. She doesn't mention the child. Maybe because that was never confirmed. I don't know. But also notice they're characterizing it as a guy jumping on the hood of a car when he was being accelerated into. And I assume they had the drone footage by this time. I'm not sure, though. I do not think there's anything noble or heroic in yelling, "Fuck your comfort" to families trying to eat in the local restaurants. Yeah, they did that. The kids yelled, "Fuck your comfort" to a bunch of people eating in like the outdoor dining area because of COVID. I thought it was, interesting that they were that aggressive. I don't think it was that scary. Oh my gosh, we're scared. Or calling officers effing pigs and worse. Or gyrating and twerking in short shorts in the street. Oh my goodness, the twerking. Right? So now it's getting into this, it's getting a little weird. Or stomping and spitting on the flag, although protected by free speech. So Tianna Arata did dance and stomp on the American flag, and that was a big thing that the local right around here, right wing, freaked out about. It's protected speech, people. You can do whatever you want to a flag. It's a piece of cloth. It represents the freedom that we have to, destroy the flag if we want to. It's just a flag. Okay, for some people, this is interesting. She doesn't find it noble, although protected by free speech. So she's already saying she's angry about that, but has to admit, I know it's protected speech. I will always personally see my dead friends who served in the Marine Corps, who gave their lives to defend the freedoms expressed by our Constitution. Their coffins were decorated by the same flag that they burn and spit on. So really interesting. I mean, it's quite a long email. This is in the Paso Robles Press. They just ran the letter that was shared by the Tribune, but it's really interesting. So obviously there was division in this DA's office over over how this whole thing was handled. So it's very fascinating to me, this whole situation. Basically vindication for these protesters. I interviewed a few of them at the time, and they were saying, man, the cops started lying about what happened. I saw a live stream that day that got taken down where I could see clearly that this car was accelerating into people, but clearly and continually the law enforcement, CHP, and the district attorney, is very, very right-wing district attorney, to the point that it's prejudicing himself against the cases he's trying. It's obviously political that he's getting kicked off of cases. So we'll see what happens now with the rest of these cases that are involved with this, because I don't see how they can't I don't see why some of these lawyers aren't going to try to get their clients, get Dan Dow off of their cases, his office off of their cases as well.